Sorry, guys. Hopefully, so I just did a video. There's a little disclaimer in that video I just did outside. So yes, this workout vest that I have, it's not really so much a vest, but it's obviously I did it out in the cold, but it is a little bit small on me. So if you are seeing a little bit of my stomach in the video, hopefully I don't get a warning about that. Obviously, I do have something on that's covering my, I wouldn't go out there with no shirt on. I mean, that's risky. But I have the book out, so we're gonna do two chapters tonight. We're gonna do, let's see what we ended on. Um, so yeah, we're on chapter 6 right now, but I think it'll be good if we can get through 7. I think that might be good enough tonight. Um, so I'm actually going to go ahead and do the book first, and then I have some history about my ancestry that I would love to share about with you all about. But actually, so this is really cool. A lot of you that know, I love Norse mythology. It's one of my favorite things that inspire me, but it actually happens to be in my ancestry. Because McNally, if you break it up, it's actually an Irish last name, but definitions are different if you break the nickname or the last name up. Um, but yeah, I will go over that today. I'll be right back, guys. He didn't go out with me when I went outside. Yeah, buddy, I'll be right there. Hey, Mom, what would you say is like worse smelling, Dad's pee or his farts? And what is worse, the smoke?
League. Did your three selections wind up being Emma, James, and Francois? They have played brilliantly so far. So let's see if they can keep it going today and tomorrow. Good luck. Here we go. Categories are A Writer's Life for
Well, I'm not gonna watch that. I gotta go do all that other shit now.
I know you're not gonna watch it. I know you're not gonna watch it. Look at TV, you can't watch it. Look at the TV, you can't watch it.
Oh yeah. Did he poops?
Yeah.
Good boy.
You did go down like that. You don't want your son cooking.
That way you can see eyes, Tom. If you think you see something, you turn it on. Look in the woods. See eyes. Most likely if there's something out there, they're gonna be looking. Reason I got caught. I didn't know anybody was up over there across the street back when the old people had it.
Yeah.
And I had seen eyeballs out by their air conditioner one night.
Yeah.
I took him out. So I did the same fucking thing again. These fucking young men all come running out, like 4 of them come running out. I'd say like college kids and all tough and
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't flash the house or I didn't really care. I didn't know if anybody was even there though. You know what I mean? I didn't
Yeah.
think that anybody was there.
Yeah.
So I was still in front of our house, up in here. So I don't know that I may have blasted their house. I don't know.
Mm. He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yes, he was. Mm-mm. I know. I love it. Did you give him stuff?
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. I love you too. You know, today, when I was there from my, when I was upstairs,
Yeah.
and it was happened it twice. The guy, that was there,
Mhm.
mentally, I'm not mentally, but, you can't see him.
Mhm.
Heard twice, it sounded just like you. So I turned it down, because I'm thinking, who is you? You were downstairs.
Yeah. Hey guys, so I'm back. So I just let Thor. I did put on a sweatshirt, but just brought Thor back in. But let's do this thing. Let's read through chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about living by a love ethic. We must live for the day and work for the day. When human society realigns itself with the radical love of God in a truly democratic paradigm, there is no love of power for power's sake. Awakening to love can happen only as we let go of our obsession with power and domination. Culturally, all spheres of American life, politics, religion, the workplace, domestic households, intimate relations should and could have as their foundation a love ethic. The underlying values of a culture and its ethics shape and inform the way we speak and act. A love ethic presupposes that everyone has the right to be free, to live fully and well. To bring a love ethic to every dimension of our lives, our society would need to embrace change. At the end of The Art of Loving, Rich from affirms that important and radical changes are necessary if love is to become a social and not a highly in, individualistic marginal phenomenon. Individuals who choose to love can and do alter our lives in ways that honor the primacy of a love ethic. We do this by choosing to work with individuals we admire and respect, committing to give our all to relationships by embracing a global vision where we see our lives and our fate as intimately connected to those of everyone else on the planet. Commitment to a love ethic transforms our lives by offering offering us a different set of values to live by. In large and small ways, we make choices based on a belief that honesty, openness, and personal integrity need to be expressed in public and private decisions. I chose to move to a small city so I could live in the same area as family, even though it was not as culturally desirable as the place I left. Friends of mine live at home with aging parents, caring for them even though they have enough money to go elsewhere. Living by a love ethic, we learn to value loyalty and a commitment to sustain bonds over material advancement. While careers and making money remain important agendas, they never take precedence over valuing and nurturing human life and well-being. I know no one who has embraced a love ethic whose life has not become joyous and more fulfilling. The widespread assumption that ethical behavior takes the fun out of life is false. In actuality, living ethically ensures that relationships in our lives, including encounters with strangers, nurture our spiritual growth. Behaving unethically with no thought to the consequences of our actions is a bit like eating tons of junk food. While it may taste good in the end, the body is never really adon, adon, adequately nourished and remains in a constant state of lack and longing. Our souls feel this lack when we act unethically, behaving in ways that diminish our spirits and dehumanize others. Testimony in New Age writing affirms the way in which embracing a love ethic transforms life for the good. Yet, a lot of this information only reaches those of us who have class privilege, and often individuals whose lives are rich in spiritual and material well being, who have diverse friends from all walks of life, who nurture their personal integrity, tell the rest of the world these things are impossible to come by. I am talking here about the many prophets of doom who tell us that racism will never end. Sexism is here to stay. The rich will never share their resources. We would all be surprised if we could enter their lives for a day. Much of what they are telling us cannot be had they have, but in keeping with a capitalist based notion of well being, they really believe there's not enough to go around, that the good life can be had only by a few. Talking to a university audience recently, I expressed my faith in the power of white people to speak out against racism, challenging and changing prejudice empathetically, stating that I definitely believe we can all change our minds and our actions. I stressed that this faith was not rooted in a utopian longing, but rather that I believe this because of our nation's history of the many individuals who have offered their lives in the service of justice and freedom. When challenged by folks who claimed that these individuals were exceptions, I agreed, but I then talked about the necessity of changing our thinking so that we see ourselves as being like the one who does change rather than among who refuse to change. What made these individuals exceptional was not that they were any smarter or kinder than their neighbors, but that they were willing to live the truth of their values. Here is another example. If you go door to door in our nation and talk to citizens about domestic violence, almost everyone will insist that they do not support male violence against women, that they believe it to be morally and ethically wrong. However, if you then explain that we can only end male violence against women by challenging patriarchy, that means no longer accepting the notion that men should have more rights and privileges than women because of biological difference, or that men should have the power to rule over women. That is when the agreement stops. There is a gap between the values they claim to hold and their willingness to do the work of connecting through thought and action, theory and practice to realize these values and thus create a more just society. Sadly, many of our nation's citizens are proud to live in one of the most democratic countries in the world, even as they are afraid to stand up for individuals who live under repressive and fascist governments. They are afraid to act on what they believe because it would mean challenging the conservative status quo. Refusal to stand up for what you believe in weakens individual morality and ethics as well as those of the culture. No wonder then that we are a nation of people, the majority of whom across race, class, and gender claim to be religious, claim to believe in the divine power of love, and yet collectively remain unable to embrace a love ethic and allow it to guide behavior, especially if doing so would mean supporting radical change. Fear of radical changes leads many citizens of our nation to betray their minds and hearts. Yet we are all subjected to radical changes every day. We face them by moving through fear. These changes are usually imposed by the status quo. For example, revolutionary new technologies have led us all to accept computers. Our willingness to embrace this unknown shows that we are all capable of confronting fears of radical change, that we can cope. Obviously, it is not in the interest of the conservative status quo to encourage us to confront our collective fear of love. An overall cultural embrace of a love ethic would mean that we would all oppose much of the public policy conservatives condemn and support. Society's collective fear of love must be faced if we are to lay claim to a love ethic that can inspire us and give us the courage to take necessary changes. Writing about the changes that must be made from explained society must be organized in such a way that man's social loving nature is not separated from his social existence but becomes one with it. If it is true, as I have tried to show, that love is the only sane and satisfactory response to the problem of human existence, then any society which includes relatively the development of love must in the long run perish of its own contraction with the basic necessities of human nature. Indeed, to speak of love is not preaching, for the simple reason that it means to speak of the ultimate and real need in every human being, to have faith in the possibility of love as a social and not only exceptional individual phenomenon, is a rational faith based on the insight in the very nature of man. Faith enables us to move past fear. We can collectively reign regain our faith in the transformative power of love by cultivating courage, the strength to stand up for what we believe in, to be accountable both in word and deed. I am especially fond of the biblical passage in the first epistle of John, which tells us there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. From childhood on, this passage of scripture has enchanted me. I was fascinated by the repeated use of the word perfect. For some time I thought of this word only in relation to being without fault or defect. Taught to believe that this understanding of what it means to be perfect was always out of human reach, that we are of necessity essentially human because we are not perfect, but we're always bound by the mystery of the body, by our limitations. This call to know a perfect love disturbed me. It seemed a worthy calling, but impossible. That is, until I looked for a deeper, more complex understanding of the word perfect, and found a definition emphasizing the will to refine. Suddenly, my passage was illuminated or illuminated love as a process that has been refined, ultimately altered as it moves from state to state, is that perfect love that can cast out fear. As we love, fear necessarily leaves. Contrary to the notion that one must work to attain perfection, this outcome does not have to be struggled for. It just happens. It is the perfect gift, or it is the gift perfect love offers. To receive the gift, we must first understand that there is no fear in love, but we do fear, and fear keeps us from trusting in love. Cultures of domination rely on the cultivation of fear as a way to ensure obedience in our society. We make much of love and say little about fear, yet we are all terribly afraid most of the time. As a culture, we are obsessed with the notion of safety, yet we do not question why we live in states of extreme anxiety and dread. Fear is the primary force upholding structures of domination. It promotes the desire for separation, the desire not to be known, when we are taught that safety lies always with sameness, then difference of any kind will appear as a threat. When we choose to love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation and separation. The choice to love is a choice to connect, to find ourselves in the other. Since so many of us are imprisoned by fear, we would consider it important to think critically about the images they create, and that would mean thinking about the impact of these images, the ways they shape culture and inform how we think and act in everyday life. If unfamiliar with love's terrain, they would hire consultants who would provide the necessary insight. Even though some individual scholars try to tell us there is no direct connection between images of violence and the violence confronting us in our lives, the common sense truth remains: we are all affected by the images we consume, by the state of mind we are in when watching them. If consumers want to be entertained and the images shown us as entertaining are images of violent dehumanization, it makes sense that these acts become more acceptable in our daily lives, and that we become less likely to respond to them with moral outrage or concern. Where we all seeing more images of loving human interaction, it would undoubtedly have a positive impact on our lives. We cannot talk about changing the types of images of or images offered us in this mass media without acknowledging the extent to which the vast majority of the images we see are created from a patriarchal standpoint. These images will not change until partial thinking and perspectives change. Individual women and men who do not see themselves as victims of partial power find it difficult to take seriously the need to challenge and change partial thinking, but reduction is always possible. Masses of people are negatively affected by patriarchal institutions and most specifically by male domination. Since individuals committed to advancing patriarchy are producing most of the images we see, they have an investment in providing us with representations that reflect their values and the social institutions they wish to uphold. Partially like any system of domination, for example, racism relies on socializing everyone to believe that in all human relations there is an inferior and a superior party. One person is strong, the other weak, and that it is therefore natural for the power to rule over the powerless. To those who support partial thinking, maintaining power and control is acceptable by whatever means. Naturally, anyone socialized to think this way would be more interested in and stimulated by scenes of domination and violence rather than by scenes of love and care. Yet they need a consumer audience to whom they can sell their product. Therein lies our power to demand change. While the contemporary feminist movement has done much to intervene with this kind of thinking, challenging and changing it, and by so doing offering women and men a chance to lead more fulfilling lives, partial thinking is still the norm for those in power. This does not mean we do not have the right to demand change. We have power as consumers. We can exercise that power all the time by not choosing to invest time, energy, or funds to support the production and dissemination of mass media. Images that do not reflect life-enhancing values, that undermine a love ethic. This is not meant to be an argument for censorship. Most of the evils in our world are not created by the mass media. For example, clearly the mass media does not create violence in the home. Domestic violence was widespread even when there was no television, but everyone knows that all forms of violence are glamorized and made to appear interesting and seductive by the mass media. The producers of these images could just as easily use the mass media to challenge and change violence. When images we see condone violence, whether they lead any of us to be more violent or not, they do affirm the notion that violence is an acceptable means of social control, that it is fine for one individual or group to dominate another individual or group. Domination cannot exist in any social situation where a love ethic prevails. Jung's insight that if the will to power is paramount, love will be lacking. It's important to remember when love is present, the desire to dominate and exercise power cannot rule the day. All the great social movements for freedom and justice in our society have promoted a love ethic. Concern for the collective good of our nation, city, or neighbor, rooted in the values of love, makes us all seek to nurture and protect that good. If all public policy was created in the spirit of love, we would not have to worry about unemployment, homelessness, schools failing to teach children, or addiction. Where a love ethic informing all public policy in cities and towns, individuals would come together and map out programs that would affect the good of everyone. Melody Chavez's wonderful book, Altars in the Street, A Neighborhood Fights to Survive tells a story of real people coming together across differences of race and class to improve their living environment. She speaks from the perspective of a white woman who moves with her family into a predominantly black community. As someone who embraces a love ethic, Melody joins her neighbors to create peace and love in their environment. Their work succeeds but is undermined by the failure of support from public policy and city government. Concurrently, she also works to help prisoners on death row. Loving community in all its diversity, Melody states, "Sometimes I think that I've been trying on death row and in my neighborhood to gain some control over the violence in my life. As a child, I was completely helpless in the face of violence." Her book shows the changes a love ethic can make even in the most troubled community. It also documents the tragic consequences to human life when terror and violence become the accepted norm. When small communities organize their lives around a love ethic, every aspect of daily life can be affirming for everyone. In all his prose work, Kentucky poet Wendell Berry writes eloquently about the positive values that exist in rural communities that embrace an ethic of communalism and the sharing of resources. In another turn of the crank, Berry exposes the extent to which the interests of big business lead to the destruction of rural communities, reminding us that destruction is fast becoming the norm in all types of communities. He encourages us to learn from the lives of folks who live in communities governed by a spirit of love and communalism. Sharing some of the values held by citizens of these communities, he writes, "There are people who take and hold a generous and neighborly view of self preservation. They do not believe that they can't, that or they do not believe that they can survive and flourish by the rule of dog eat dog. They do not believe that they can succeed by defeating or destroying or selling or using up everything but themselves. They doubt that good solutions can be produced by violence. They want to preserve the precious things of nature, of human culture, and pass them on to their children. They see that no commonwealth or community of interest can be defined by greed. They know that work ought to be necessary, it ought to be good, it ought to be satisfying and dignifying to the people who do it, and generally useful and pleasing to the people for whom it is done. I like living in small towns precisely because they are most often the places in our nation where basic principles underlying a love ethic exist and are the standards by which most people try to live their lives. In the small town where I live now, only some of the time there is a spirit of neighborliness, of fellowship, care, and respect. These same values existed in the neighborhoods of the town in which I grew up. Even though I spend most of my time in New York City, I live in a cooperative apartment building where we all know each other. We protect and nurture our collective well-being. We strive to make our home place a positive environment for everyone. We all agree that integrity and care enhance all our lives. We try to live by the principles of a love ethic. To live our lives based on the principles of a love ethic, showing care, respect, knowledge, integrity, and the will to cooperate, we have to be courageous. Learning how to face our fears is one way we embrace love. Our fear may not go away, but it will not stand in the way. Those of us who have already chosen to embrace a love ethic, allowing it to govern and inform how we think and act, know that when we let our light shine, we draw to us and are drawn to other barriers of light. We are not alone. I actually might just end up reading part of chapter 7. Um, but we are gonna get into. I'm just gonna go grab a drink because my throat's a bit dry.
Just see this last one I just sent. It's pretty good. It's a little long, but so they're manufacturing this, or when somebody comes in, it looks like somebody's falling through.
Yeah.
And then they're doing this up above. So when the kid comes up, he's gonna think that's him.
Yeah.
This guy's in it with him,
Yeah.
but the kid doesn't know.
Oh, you go see Mimi? Alright, guys. I had to give my son attention. As I said, sometimes if I don't come in right away, it's because he loves attention. Okay, so actually, since we're getting into chapter 7, we'll probably read up to. We'll stop at 108. Is there a period actually? Yeah, we'll stop at the word sanctuary, which is page 108. So this chapter is about greed. Those obviously out. I will say the chapter we just read was really important because that's a big thing with anything. So as they were talking about, like, as far as like a working background, anything, schooling, I will say it can be hard working in or at least being raised in a small town, because for me, schooling was not, I will say, I personally feel like that in my life I've had, I would say the majority of teachers I've had throughout my schooling, I mean, I would say the number I feel like increased quite a bit. I would say maybe 30% of the teachers I had were very good with me. Most of them, I will say, like throughout middle school, I will say middle school was different, and it was, I would say, different in the fact that, like, even when I did graduate, because I ended up transferring over to another school, but I will say, for me, the love came in middle school, especially the love for like students or students that might have needed a change. I wouldn't really, because the thing is, support would be a good word, because support is a big word as in this book, it's a good, it's a word, not just a word, but a movement that's in love, but support. The teachers weren't going to support me into transitioning to me to another school, because I know I was told that I wasn't going to graduate, or actually not so much graduate, um but move on to the next grade. And it was not due to my behavior, but I feel like schools that show love, I feel like, have more of an understanding of what disabilities are and how much they matter. Whereas teachers, a lot of teachers don't take the time to really understand or do any like thing to help support those who have difficulties. Um, but there's never been a time in my life where I haven't stated to anybody, I'm having difficulties understanding what you're telling me. could you possibly explain differently so then but I mean, that's the thing, is if I don't understand something, I'm willing to speak up. Because people can be straightforward with me, but if it's something I'm not understanding, or I know people will kind of like state it differently. I will say it's not so much hard than it is like if my mom speaks to me, because due to her stroke, sometimes she can't make out what she wants to say. So people will, I mean, I don't really get frustrated with her. I mean, I do get frustrated with her at times, but not to the extent where I'm mad at her trying to get out something, because I know she's trying to get out what she said, what she wants to say. But again, so this chapter here is about greed. It's actually about greed and hatred, and those are two words, or really two words that not just fuel me, but I would never give any of these. I wouldn't even simplifies these words in a healthy, loving setting, especially if you're with an individual, whether it's family, friends, or even family, like friends of your family. Because the thing is, if you get, I mean, it says it right here, fading away, meaning that if any of that is allowed, you're pushing that person away. Because for me, hatred a lot of the times comes fate. And when I mean, I would say greed, hatred, and fate are three words that people state, oh, is okay to have in love, or really love within communities, families. I don't allow that, and I will say I don't allow fate for. I mean, they state that greed, and hatred can bring families together. If that happens, that person, whoever is being greedy or being hateful, they have to change their shit. And sometimes changes do happen. They happen quickly. They can turn around for the positive or negative. But I will say I struggled, and to this day, I mean, I would say myself, I've come an extremely long way. I mean, others probably would point out I definitely need to work more on not talking or texting so much, or really reaching out so much. Because again, overwhelm, I would say is another word. I mean, I would say overwhelming would be a better word, used as a word in a family, like it because I mean, that's the thing, apology should always be a thing, in-person apologies when it comes to overwhelming, even if you don't mean to overwhelm someone. But I would never get away with being in a I mean, I would get away from a family that has any of those four words, using greed, hatred, fate to bring a family together. It's what comes with those meanings in bringing a. But I mean, the fact that people like to approach it that way hurts me even more. It doesn't just mean they allow those words to happen, they allow that behavior within the words happen. Because words have power just as much as actions do. But actions, I think, have more. I mean, honestly, I would say by listening, words will have power, but by actually going through with the listening and acting are like the Batman and Robin words. But I will say a big sign for greed and hatred. I mean, it says it right here on on like literally the first page of chapter 7, fading away. If you allow any of those to impact a connection with somebody, that person that doesn't want that can walk. So when I think of fading away, I think of somebody leaving or walking away from as I said, if people don't change, if people don't change the way they think, they keep that greed and hatred because they think it's okay to keep. It leads for people fading away. So, but it says so. This is actually a passage by Sharon Salzberg, but she writes, the fading away of greed and hatred is the foundation for liberation. Liberation is the sure heart's release and understanding of the truth so powerful that there is no turning back from it. Although we live in close contact with neighbors, masses of people in our society feel alienated, cut off. Alone, insulation, and loneliness are central causes of depression and despair. Yet they are the outcome of life in a culture where things matter more than people. Materialism creates a world of narcissism in which the focus of life is solely on acquisition and consumption. A culture of narcissism is not a place where love can flourish. The emergence of the me culture is a direct response to our nation's failure to truly actualize the vision of democracy are articulated in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Left alone in the me culture, we consume and consume with no thought of others, meaning that we consume. So really, greediness meaning we you only care about yourself and not how others might feel, or you don't even bother asking how somebody else is doing. Like, that's greediness. That is a big way of explaining, you know, people talking about themselves too much. Where I really have learned and have tried, you know, enough enough's enough. I typically want to be nice and polite of how other people feel, instead of expressing my own opinion or thoughts.
Bye, buddy. Good night.
Good night. But I'm gonna say this, but the live I did earlier today about Khabib and Conor McGregor having that, I definitely want to see them kind of like, I think a lot of people want to see them to reconnect. But the thing is, even though a lot of that didn't affect Khabib, I think Conor, as like they say here, Conor really wanted global attention, meaning that he wanted to rise above the top of everybody. And the thing is, he wanted to be more than the people. Like the belts that he got were more meaningful to him than the people he fought. I feel like a lot of it, the cockiness, was due to him wanting to be on top, pushing forward with his career. Which they call that materialism. But Conor wanting a solo career of straightforward going to the top, pushing his way to the top. Each win granted him a belt or a really serious victory. But I would say the Khabib and Conor thing going on was, I think if everything I think things could have worked out, and I'm hoping they might be. I mean, I don't know this for sure. But I feel like the work between Zabib and Connor after, after things were destroyed for, and I'm not leaving one or the other out, but shaking hands, agreeing to terms as being acquaintances, or possibly pursuing a friendship outside of the ring, and respecting one another, whoever is victorious or who does win or who win, whatever. The thing is, as a UFC fighter, you have to take the wins and you have to take the losses going along with that. But masses of people in our society feel alienated, cut off, alone. Isolation and loneliness are central causes of depression and despair. Yet they are outcome of life in a culture where things matter more than people. Materialism creates a world of narcissism in which the focus of life is solely on acquisition and consumption. A culture of narcissism is not a place where love can flourish. The emergence of the me culture is a direct response to our nation's failure to truly actualize the vision of democracy articulated in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Left alone in the me culture, we consume and consume with no thought of others. Greed and explosion became the norm when an ethic of domination prevails. They bring in their wake alienation and lovelessness, intense spiritual and emotional lack in our lives is the perfect breeding ground for material greed and overconsumption. In a world without love and passion to connect can be replaced by passion to possess. While emotional needs are difficult and often are impossible to satisfy, material desires are easier to fulfill. Our nation fell into the trap of pathological narcissism in the wake of wars that brought economic bounty while undermining the vision of freedom and justice essential to sustaining democracy. Nowadays, we live in a world where poor teenagers are willing to maim and murder for a pair of tennis shoes or a designer coat. This is not a consequence of poverty. In dire situations of poverty at earlier times in our nation's history, it would have been unthinkable to the poor to murder someone for a luxury item. While it was common for individuals to steal or attack someone in the interests of acquiring resources, money, food, or something as simple as a winter coat to ward off the cold, there was no value system in place that made a life less important than the material desire for an inessential object. Whether poor or rich, in the mid 50s, most citizens in our nation felt it was the best place in the world to live because it was democracy, a place where human rights mattered. This sense of our nation's vision sustained its citizens and served as the catalyst empowering freedom struggles in our society. In the article Chicken Little, Cassandra and the Real Wolf: So Many Ways to Think About the Future, Donla Meadows describes the significance of visionary standpoint. A vision articulates a future that someone deeply wants, and it does it so clearly, impellingly, that it summons up the energy, agreement, sympathy, political will, creativity, resources, or whatever to make that vision happen. Our nation's active participation in global warfare called it into question. Its commitment to democracy, both here at home and abroad. Abroad, that vision was diminished in the wake of the Vietnam War. Prior to the war, a hopeful vision of justice and love had been evoked by the civil rights struggle, the feminist movement, and sexual liberation. However, by the late 70s, after the failure of radical movements for social justice aimed at making the world a democratic, peaceful place where resources could be shared and a meaningful life could become a possibility for everyone, folks stopped talking about love. The loss of lives at home and abroad had created economic plenty while leaving in its wake every devastation and loss. Americans were asked to sacrifice the vision of freedom, love, and justice and put in its place the worship of materialism and money. This vision of society upheld the need for imperialistic war and injustice. A great feeling of despair gripped our nation when the leaders who had led struggles for peace, justice, and love were assassinated. Psychologically, we were in despair even as economic booms opened up jobs for women and men from previously disenfranchised groups. Instead of looking for justice in the public world, individuals turned to their private lives seeking a place of solace and escape. Initially, lots of folks turned inward to family and relationships to find again a sense of connection and stability. Coming face to face with rampant lovelessness in the home created an overwhelming sense of cultural brokenheartedness. Not only did individuals despair about their capacity to change the world, they began to feel enormous despair about their ability to make basic positive changes in the emotional fabric of their daily lives. Divorce rates were the primary indicators that marriage was not a safe haven, and mounting public awareness of the extent to which domestic violence and all manner of child abuse were widespread clearly revealed that the patriarchal family could not offer sanctuary. Wow, that is like that is awesome. All right. So, I do want to talk to you guys about. Good. About my about my heritage, some of the ancestry I found out about. Um, my ancestry, and I thought it would be kind of cool tonight. So yeah, so let's look this up. So I let's see. McNally. So McNally is a Irish surname originating from Gaelic, meaning the son of the Hound of Ulster. McAnally, or son of the poor man, Mac and Fala, predominantly found in Ulster. Antrim, Monaghan. It represents a family with roots as early as the 12th century, sometimes associated with fierce warriors or local leaders. So it says McNally is primarily originating. So the last name originating from Ulster. Ulster count. So all the counties in Ulster are are Mayo, Monaghan, and Connacht, Mayo, Roscommon. It stems from two main Gaelic roots: Mac and Fally, son of the poor man, or indigent one, or Macinalla, son of the Hound of Ulster. It is often associated with the O'Neill sept and has variants including Nally and Macanally, meaning um so Ulster concentrated heavily in counties interim. So that's those are like the geographical roots. Canale principally found in Mayo and Roscommon, often shortened simply to Nally. Historical associations. Some interpretations connect the name to McAnally, meaning son of the wild hound or wolf, particularly in County Tyrone. Variations. Um, Common variations include McAnally, Nally, McAnally, and McNally. Significant historical presence. The name has been documented in Ireland as far back as 1659, with substantial populations in Ulster during the 19th century. The name was noted in the 1891 UK census as having a high concentration in Lancashire, England, reflecting Irish immigration. McNally is an Irish surname in Ulster. It originated in County Tyrone as the English form of McNally, son of Sue Alia, a Gaelic name of the Senil Neogan meaning the wild hound, i.e., wolf, or wild hound or wolf. There we go. Wow, my hair just been across the world, Ireland, Australia. The original Gaelic form of McNally was Mac on Flagia, which is derived from the word Felihich, which means poor man. The surname McNally was first found in counties Armagh and Monaghan, Irish Moonachon, located in the northern part of the Republic of Ireland in the province of Ulster, where they held a family seat from ancient times. Ancient times. Awesome. A name was often recorded during the Middle Ages under several different spelling variations during the life of its bearer because literacy was rare. There was no real push to clarify and define any of the languages found in the British Isles at that time. Variations found of the name McNally include McNally, McAnally, McAnally, and McAnally, and others. Wait, so wait a second. So the name McNally is in medieval Ireland has two primary origins, both linked to the warrior tradition. It is interpreted as the son of the Hound of Ulster, Macon Alda in Ulster, linking to legendary heroes, or as son of the poor man. Macon Valley in Connacht, the Hound. Reference suggests a lineage of high leadership warriors in elite status. McNally surname meaning son of Hound of Ulster McAnally. Prevalent in northern counties, Antrim, Monaghan, it refers to a wild hound or wolf, often associated with the Senil Iogan branch of the northern Ui Nila. or was it Yuan, or no, the Al Unali or something like that. Son of the poor man, Mackin was it Philly, commonly found in Connacht Mayo, Roscommon, Roscommon, uh, often spelled Nally. It relates to a Gaelicized form of the Norman Lee poem referring to a vow of poverty. Legendary connection. The Hound moniker signifies a direct connection to Cu Chulan, the mythological Hound of Ulster, implying a reputation for bravery and noble warrior status. Usage examples and context in medieval Ireland. Warrior society. Fauna. The term warrior, often Fian, was used for young men living apart from society, often engaging in seasonal raiding. Elite warriors, Galloglass, elite mercenaries, Galloglass or Gallala, from Gaelic Scottish families like MacSweeney's, operated between the 13th and 16th centuries. Light infantry, Kerne, the common Irish soldier was known as a kern. Saturn, typically a slightly armed infantry man. This is really cool. So, do I have Viking in my blood? Maybe even like Middle Ages. Hey, buddy. But anyways, guys, I am gonna get off. Thank you all for watching. Have a great night.